Hey there, Goa fans. Mark DJ Solitaire with episode 66 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which, in every episode, I share one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. We're well into the 96-97 season, and this one is from 97, and I remember the circumstances for this really well because this track comes from the first promo CD that I received after moving to London. So this was kind of a big deal for me because this is sort of, I was going there to get involved in the scene and wanting to DJ. And of course, unreleased music. This is kind of, how do you get unissued music, right? You need to, it's all who you know. And finally, I knew people. So, I'd gotten to know Tsuyoshi in October that year in 96. And then we really connected more sort of after my Paris visit in January 97. And so from that point, he graciously invited me to hang out in the DJ booth at the Return to the Source parties. And so I was that was some of my unofficial DJ training. And we'd occasionally go out for dinner and so on. So I got to meet John Perloff, who was the manager, all right, the director of, doing all the business side of Matsuri. And it would have been probably April or May 97. I'm in the DJ booth at Return to the Source. John comes in, says hello, and he hands me a plastic sleeve with this promo CD of Matsuri compilation, Resonance Mood. You can see it says for promotional use only. It was in a plastic transparent sleeve, not this hard case that I now have it in. And this was like, yeah, finally, this is like kind of one of my goals achieved, move up to next level. At least it felt like that. And so I went back home, of course, eventually after the set, after the party, and wow, I was blown away. A lot, every major label compilation was a big deal back then. And this was certainly a big deal. And there are several tracks I'll be featuring from here. Just like taking a quick look, there's like three or four at least. I mean, it was a doozy. So it was released in June, I think it was June 5th, 97. I just looked on Discogs. And the track that'll feature today is by a project that hasn't been in this series yet. And that is Lunar Asylum's track Shadow 5, which I love. It was one of the ones, I mean, there's so many, all of the compilations back then, every track had a different flavor, and that's what I really loved about it. And this one had its particular flavor, and there's several other tracks that grabbed me for different reasons. And this one, I mean, it grabbed me for its own reason. So Lunar Asylum, by the way, is so it's Chris Stevenson. I had to look it up because I've never met him, and Paul Greendale, who I have met. We played at the same party in Belgium in 2018, and then just again recently in Goa. And so Paul and I have been in touch, and he very graciously shared some fantastic memories about his time making music and at this time, and also about this track. And I kind of need to read all of this because I think it's really rich. So on go the veteran glasses, and he's in Goa while he's writing this, which is pretty great. So it's an interesting question you ask, he says. I've just had to listen to it, and my initial thoughts are it's quite groovy, intentional, too fast, and not very well written. But we were getting better at production and becoming more aware of the importance of the transitions. I'd just learned how to print key parts, kick, hat, snare, clap, bass, and what I call SEQ parts. So I'm assuming that means sequence parts. And sorry, this just slid down here to ADAT, ADAT. So I have no idea what this means. Again, right? Not a technical guy with this. I'm the musical guy, which upped our game in terms of production. I learned this from working with American producer Tom Fredericks on D-Ream, who is a string of pop hits at that time, several #1 hit singles. So he was working in that band. He told me in another message. I had done a housey sort of thing, Raise the Spirit by Northwest, and we needed a B-side. So I was booked into a studio on Kensal Road, Sound of Voltage. This was owned by Steve D'Agostino and Zeus B. Held, Connie Plank's partner, and full of vintage analog synths. I became good friends with Steve, and when he went to America to work on a Prodigy album, he let me have the studio for what he paid for it, virtually nothing, £200 a month or something like that. Dave Ball from Soft Cell had his studio in there. We were drinking buddies at the pub next door, which we nicknamed the Village Idiot. DJ Jeremy Healy lived on the cafe, above the cafe next door, and Depeche Mode were in East Coast Studio next door. Steve did some work with them, and told us how we would spend 3 days creating a tiny blip sound on their modular system. So again, you know, the amount of time that was spent, you know, exploring and being curious. So you know, he just adds that it was a great period of my life. I just turned 30, was making records, and had a studio which was 5 minutes away from my flat in Kensal Green. You know, a few other really quite lovely comments. But it's interesting that, you know, he's like, oh yeah, I don't really like that track quite as much as the others. And he also added that, you know, once things got to 98 and it was starting to move more into that side trance direction, he really lost interest and he just moved away from things. Now, this is a different kind of track, and you know, there was a whole evolution going on and a lot of different directions that the music was going on in, and so it should. I mean, you know, we don't want everything to be same because, you know, defeats the purpose. And Tsuyoshi was very focused on that, and that was something that characterized his compilations and also his DJ sets. And he got a bit of heat for that because a lot of folks were like, you know, hey, this isn't quite the genre that I'm looking for. And I know Nick Taylor also spoke up against that. You know, his Snakes Thing stuff was kind of wacky and outside the box. So, you know, but Tsuyoshi, I thought then and still think now, is someone who's really capable of, you know, balancing a whole bunch of different styles and making them work. And in the compilations, that's the case. And for me, this track really works in that way as well. It is very fast, but it's also very clear. And it's one of those tracks that's, again, you know, is really uplifting and fast. But for me, it's not cheesy at all. Some people might say, hey, that riff, no, totally works. I think it's a rapid fire, high energy track, but it's really got a lot going for it in terms of the sleek sounds, the beautiful melodic riffs, and the lasery sounds. So let's give this a listen. We're going to put on Shadow 5 by Lunar Asylum. So cool, mysterious opening, you know, just kind of some of those outer space or robotic sounds. Sounds like you're tuning in a radio. That would come the following year with Extreme. Cool beginning. And this, now we're starting to get some parts that are going to show up in the track. So that cool voice before, and then this great bouncy bass. Not quite bass perhaps, but whatever the riff is, wherever it is. Very cleverly done here. Just leading in. And then a very cool. Yeah, I love this. So this reminds me a little bit of Ace of Wands by Akasha, right? Like with this kind of bouncy sort of building, bubbling kind of bass. And it's groovy, as he said. And lots of momentum in. And it goes up. So we got the hi-hats. You know, again, that whole upper frequency opens up. So, you know, it's very simple. It's not like overt melodic kind of operatic stuff, right? Just some cool little riffs with some bouncy percussive stuff going on. Very cool sounds, you know, and again, that kind of robotic alien sort of thing. I mean, for me, this is like, you know, you're really going through some psychedelic tunnel. Love that sound. Some of the build up here. And more of the same. And again, listen to how many things are going on, so pay attention to how many different frequencies are filled with different voices. And then how the elements all play together and how they're structured. And especially what I love is the voice-like nature. And now we get a sort of more impressive riff, I think, a more sort of out there one. It sounds again like one of those sort of alien germ sort of program stems. And then there's like that counterpoint, right? Those different voices are talking with one another, call and answer. And now, after that gap between them, right, we've got this one just going on. So it's like introducing itself in chunks, and now it's just going full force. It's the story, folks. Just that momentum, right? And it's really got that uplifting celebratory feel. Notice how then the kick dropped out and then this build up. Back in that sort of floatier, but still driving forward momentum, uplifting kind of vibe. And that's the stuff that really sounds like, you know, something's being said. Oop, not there. Perhaps on the next 8 bar. There we go. And then it comes back, right? A little bit more insistent, just as that one starts tweaking a bit. And I just love those little percussive shifts that just add some more tension. Notice how it's going up a little bit more now. Key change. It's not a long one, but interesting choice there. And then we're back. And listen to the layering. The engineering is really phenomenal with this. That kick. Didn't see that coming, did ya? And again, this is where it was just not predictable. You never knew when a break was going to come, because it wasn't just the usual, you know, 16 or 32 bars before there's yet another break, like in modern music. So that grinding riff had a period without the kick, and now with the kick, and now it's building up some tension more. And it's not completely new content. Right? It's a variation of what we had before. So it's kind of, you know, it's like the voice and the message has evolved. I just love that sort of granular sound, but it's also still beautifully produced. I mean, it's like more psychedelic popcorn like we've had in some other tracks before. Just there's this kind of texture, and it just ends up being these voices folding out of the air when you hear this in a big system in a space. Another great build-up. you notice how, the structure, how it's built up to this bigger climax and the higher frequencies. Now it just softens a little bit. It's not quite as loud and insistent while some of the other elements come in. All the voices are happening simultaneously, right? Just before the track starts to unwind. Now we get this sort of unwinding of the track. Paul can think what he thinks. I think that's an amazing track. So much going on, incredibly high energy. I think it's 150 or thereabouts. It is a fast one. I didn't check before filming. And I mean, it packs a punch, but it's clean. It's got a beautiful, melodic framework and harmonic framework. Just that one pitch change, but otherwise, it sort of stays in that groove. And the textured bits, build up, as I was saying just there. There's that clear progression for how much more complex and how the voices develop. And then there's that like really crazy bit where it's a lot higher. And then all of the voices are in simultaneously, and then it just kind of goes out. So this is that whole flavor that we used to have back then, that we're listening to transmissions coming from some other dimension, whether it's physically from outer space or from some inner dimension or whatever the case may be. And each riff was like part of the equation, part of the programming, part of the message. And, that whole story of how they come together takes you on a story. And then, that particular chapter's done. And then, how it is that you can have all these short stories or have this sense of narrative built between tracks. And then, you get this epic, voyage over the course of the whole party. Back in the days when it was, just that one party, and it was really, pretty much a 12-hour thing, at least in my experience when I was going to Japan, 6 to 8 to possibly 12 hours. So yeah, I have just always loved this track. It was one of the ones, again, that really stood out. There's 3 or 4 on this compilation that are probably going to be featured in this series. So thanks again to Paul for sharing those great memories with us. And thank you all for tuning in. Going to wrap up now, DJ Solitaire, with episode 66 of Retro Goa Explorations, leaving you now with the complete track by Lunar Asylum, Shadow 5.